welcome to my sewing room. We are going to have so much fun today. And another thing that I love to share with you is what we're going to do is going to be very easy. The quilt we've been working on for the whole series is going to be put together today, this beautiful quilt, and it looks like it's hard to put together, but it isn't. It's easy. This beautiful bride doll, oh, isn't she gorgeous? Well, we're going to do some techniques on her dress too. And you probably know how much I love this Cecil doll with the bride dress on it. Isn't she beautiful? Now, some of you that love to make baby bonnets, many times after your baby outgrows them, you wonder, well, what am I going to do with the bonnet? This is the cutest little stand that you're going to make. It's very, very easy, of course. You know, we like the word easy, but it will give you the perfect way to display your little baby, your daughter or your granddaughter, whatever, or maybe an antique bonnet after you're finished wearing it. Speaking of bonnets, oh my, do I love this bonnet. Easy, easy, easy. Just one handkerchief folded, believe it or not, a little bit of lace attached. One handkerchief folded. I'm going to turn it around to the back so you can see how pretty it is in the back. This is nothing in the world but a handkerchief that has been folded. And it's been folded, and a little bit of lace. Oh, goodness me, you know I have to put a little bit of lace on everything. But isn't that a wonderful bonnet? It can be used for a christening or just to wear, just a baby to wear. And now I'm going to share with you how to make the last of the quilt squares before we put our quilt together. I love Crazy Patch, and this quilt square today has ribbons made into Crazy Patch, of course surrounded by a lace heart, as our whole quilt has been. This pretty lace heart has pieces of ribbons, and the wonderful thing about using ribbons for Crazy Patch is that the edges are already finished, so you just flop them down on top of each other. You don't have to fold it and then open it. And here, as you can see, I've used just some pretty decorative stitch, and any decorative stitch will do to zigzag or to decorative stitch your pretty pieces together. Now, in order to make the Crazy Patch to go in the middle of the heart, first of all, I'll just sit around and play with the inside of the heart and draw my inside piece 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and go actually in this direction or in another direction if you want to. Now, the first thing I'll do is choose some pretty ribbons. Isn't this fun? I just love pretty piles of ribbons like I have here. Look at those wonderful colors. So I'll start in the middle one, which is this pink square, and just simply zigzag it down or straight stitch it down. Then I'll pull one piece over it, and as I said, the beautiful part about the ribbons is you don't have to finish the edges. You just simply slip one over and flop it on it. Now let's make our lace square. You know, I love to lace shape, and I've almost finished my lace heart, not a lace square, lace heart, my lace shaping. I'm going to come around, and when I shape on a curve, I put my pins closer together, as you can see right here. I'm sticking the pins into a board, and I'm shaping my lace heart to go on the outside of that pretty piece of Crazy Patch. Okay, now let's review making a miter. Pin at the top, pin at the bottom, fold the lace back on itself, remove the top pin that goes through 2 layers, and pull it around and start over again with the pins closer together on the curve. Now, how do I get rid of my heart trouble there? I'm going to come down to the very bottom. There's a gathering thread built into the French lace. I'm going to pull one of those gathering threads, and just like magic, it lays down perfectly. Then I will remove it from the board, of course, after I shape the other side. I will zigzag or machine entre deux the outside only. I will cut away the inside, and then remember that beautiful piece of Crazy Patch we made with ribbon. I will, let me unpin it so you can see it a little bit better. I will pull my Crazy Patch piece inside the heart, shape it, and then it will be time for me to zigzag or wing needle entre deux the inside. And by the way, if you want to do decorative stitches over the Crazy Patch, it would be a great idea to do that before you slip it in behind the heart. And isn't that a fun way to use Crazy Patch? And now we've had so much fun making all these beautiful heart squares during this series. It will be a great pleasure, I think, for you to see exactly how we're going to put together this quilt. And I do have a secret. It's easy. Learning how to put together this beautiful quilt is really kind of easy. Let me just generally overview what we have here. We have the wonderful pink squares with the hearts. Then the sashing has a beautiful cross-stitch piece and just a plain green piece. Cross-stitch piece, of course, joining to the plain green piece. Cross-stitch piece, in other words, we have hearts, sashings, and of course around the edge we have a binding. Now let's just see how this thing goes together. We've shown you from the back. All right, you'll have your three major pieces which have your hearts with the embellishment. You have your sashing in between, and then you have your sashing pieces which will join the three major pieces with contrasting fabric. Remember, we have the cross stitch behind here. Now then, the seams are pressed on these sashing pieces, pressed to the outside. On the pieces that will join it, the seams are pressed to the inside. When these are sewn together, this will eliminate bulk with those seams when we put all those seams together. So you see there are three big pieces to be put together and the three sashing pieces. Here we have them all put together for you. Once again, I would like to emphasize this area where it has been stitched together. On the horizontal pieces, the seam allowances are placed up and down. On the big vertical piece, the seam allowances are pressed to the inside, therefore avoiding bulk where they're sewn together. Now, to make the binding that goes around the quilts, now that we've sashed it together, to make the binding, you have your binding cut, and we're going to sew it together diagonally, and I'll show you why in just a second. So place them at this right angle. You can see here's a right angle, and I'm going to make a line from top to bottom, and I'm going to stitch it diagonally. And here is why. After I've trimmed away the excess and trimmed away the little part at the top, when I fold it in half to make the binding, once again that will get rid of some of the bulk, because you see part of the seam is here, part of the seam is here. But then the final step on the binding will be to fold it in half and then get ready to sew it on the quilt. To actually demonstrate this quilt's being put together, I have invited my dear friend and business colleague, Louise Bayard. Louise, show us how it's done.
Okay, Martha. I'm going to just show on a computer printout a little bit, again, about how the quilt was put together. The end and the middle pieces of the sashing were with the small square and the long square, and that's the one that had the embroidery on it. You stitch it together, and then the squares, the strip rather, with the heart, with the cross stitch in between, and you stitch that together. So you end up with 4 sets of the narrow sashing and then 3 sets of the blocks all together. Okay, then this is just where it's laid out, ready to be stitched. Remember that the seam allowances are pressed up on one side, and then they were pressed in or down on the other side, so that when the blocks are placed together, they'll butt together and not make very much bulk in the quilt. There it is with completed, except for the binding. Okay, and then this is where the binding is already attached, and you can miter the corners when you add that binding to it. Now, the next thing that you need to do actually is to know where to quilt to this quilt. Before you make the actual quilt sandwich, you want to end up drawing your template or having your template ready and tracing it onto your quilt square. Here I've got my quilt square upside down. But this is to represent the heart that's done in each of the quilts, and then these are the quilting lines. Now, when you do this, when you're putting it together, we did use a lining for all of the quilt. We had the complete quilt top finished and added a lining, and then a thin batting, and then the backing. The lining was added because we needed some of the lace had been cut out from behind, and we didn't want the batting to show. Now, when I quilt this, that would be the next step before I added the actual backing and the binding rather on, I would do the quilting. And when I did the quilting, I would use an invisible thread. Now this is certainly a light fabric, so I would use the clear invisible thread instead of the smoke invisible thread, but invisible thread does come in clear and smoke. Also, when you quilt with these straight lines, a walking foot is usually available for all the different sewing machines so that you can quilt the several layers and they stay together. Just for purposes right now of showing you the quilting, I'm just going to use a regular foot and a normal stitch length, probably about a 2, and just start stitching. And remember, as you're going around curves, you do want to pivot as you need to. And remember also that the lines that you draw, or rather you won't have actual drawn lines on your heart because your heart will already be on the square, but you will need to draw the lines with a marker, washout marker.
That would be important.
Yeah, right. And if you don't hit the line exactly, it's not going to really show a whole lot. But after you complete the heart, then you would complete each of the squares, or rather all of the diagonal lines, and then also I like to quilt around the edges of the inside quilt. That helps to hold everything together very nicely and give it a puffy type of look. Okay, and then Martha's already talked to you about the binding, but this is my binding that would be ready to go on. You cut your binding about 6 times the width of your desired seam allowance. So that's how you determine the size of your the size of your binding. And when you begin, you just place right sides together. You would stitch on the seam allowance, stop right on the line at the 1/4 inch seam, pivot, and then come back down. Sort of like you did when you did your lace shaping, Martha.
Your miters.
How you come up here and then just start stitching back down again.
And that's very easy to
Yes.
do. And Louise, that's what I think is so much fun about quilting.
Right.
When you learn how, it is very easy to do. And next we have a project to sew for your baby. This is my absolute favorite of all favorite baby bonnets, and it is so easy. Let me just show you the details on this bonnet. You see how cute it is. It has a little back panel. It has a little front panel that's folded over. This bonnet is nothing in the world but a beautiful embroidered handkerchief. Now you can also see, while I have it at this angle, the little ribbons that have been stitched on to come underneath and tie. And let me turn it around so you can see the back. Now this little fold over flap is just the back of the handkerchief. And as you can see, I've run a little casing here and run the ribbon through and tied it for the back. Lots of lace just traveling and going all over this bonnet, and it's very, very easy to make. Here is all you do. Now you can see I have my beautiful embroidered handkerchief, and you might even want to use an antique handkerchief. If you have one that has family meaning, it would be so sweet to use that one. You could also embroider. If this is going to be used for a christening or just a special baby gift, just go ahead and embroider with your machine embroider the name and the date. Now if you want to, you can make this bonnet without adding lace, but if you want to add lace, you can put it on either flat or gathered. I've gathered a little bit here to show you. What you do, you just pull the handkerchief over the gathered lace and straight stitch it or zigzag it on. But I wanted to leave a piece of it flat. Let me lift it up here and lay it down flat to show you that it would also be pretty if you just wanted to put the lace on flat. Just straight stitch it or zigzag it on. And now that's the first step if you want lace. It is so easy to make this bonnet. Let me move my ribbons over a little bit and show you the first step. The part that you fold back, you'll fold, this is not quite folded in half, but just measure your baby's head to see how big you want it. Now, fold this back, and then I'm going to fold my little pieces that are going to make the ties under the chin and straight stitch them or zigzag them through. Then the back part I have folded, again, right sides to right sides. Fold the back part together and straight stitch along this back edge to make a little casing. Now, it is always easier to run ribbon through a case. You can use a safety pin. That's what we always did when I was a kid, but these bodkins are really nice. So I have a little bodkin, but again, you can certainly use a safety pin. I know that's what we always used back in Scottsboro when we wanted to run ribbon or something through a casing. We just got a safety pin and clipped it to the end and started moving right on out. However, a bodkin, I like to run it through twice to kind of hold it. And then I'm just going to come in here and slip this ribbon right through here. Uh-oh, don't run it through the lace. I'm going to slip the ribbon right through here that's going to hold it. And then there's one more little trick I'm going to share with you on what to do after you get this ribbon through this back casing. What you don't want to do is the ribbon to pull out. So after I run my ribbon through that I'm going to pull up into a casing, I'm going to distribute it about half and half. I'm going to quickly slip over here right at the middle. Let me fold it to get that middle point while the ribbon is still flat. I have the middle point. I'm going to slip under my sewing machine and just simply do a little straight stitch to attach the ribbon. I may just even run a little back stitch on there, move backwards. There we go. Now I have straight stitched it so it will not go anywhere. And now then I'll also clip it a little bit. Clip off my seam, my little strings there. And then I will pull up the you see, if by hooking it in the middle there, it means my ribbon's not going to jerk out. I will pull it up and I will tie it into a bow. And after I have put my little ties on the front, that is absolutely one of the sweetest bonnets that I have ever seen. It's really easy to do. And next we have a really fun craft for you. This is a very easy to make and such a useful craft. After your baby doesn't wear the baby bonnet anymore, these are so pretty and make wonderful home decorative items to put in your baby's room or in your own bedroom, anywhere you'd like to put it. Now, we need something to put the bonnet on, and this is so easy. This is just exactly perfect to put a baby bonnet on. We've used a peach silk dupioni and an ecru French lace, and guess what the stand is? Well, it's a candlestick. Isn't that fun? I'm going to turn around too and show you that I've also used a little bit of organza ribbon to tie a pretty ribbon. This is such an easy project to do. I've got to get my candlestick. This was an inexpensive one, kind of painted green. And I get a styrofoam ball and I get a piece of batting. Well, I can't even find my ball. I get a piece of batting and wrap it around, and the way I attach it, oh, it's so hard to do. Just get some pins, stick it into the styrofoam ball, and now then the batting is attached. Next, I take my candlestick and put a glue all around the candlestick area right there. Get the bottom of the styrofoam ball with the batting already wrapped around it and glue it and hold it to make sure it's very secure. And I love silk dupioni. You probably know that by now since you've been with me on the television show a number of years. I cut a circle out of the silk dupioni, and it's really very easy to pull the thread, as you probably already know, that is built into the French lace. I used peach because this is going to go into a peach bedroom. Peach silk dupioni, I pull the thread on the French lace to make sure that the edges gather. And by the way, you'll never get them completely evenly distributed, so don't worry about it. It's going to be beautiful whether it's even or not. Then this just has a little bit of a gather. So after I pull the gathers in, I'm going to straighten it out just a little bit. By the way, I have zigzagged or serged the edge of the silk dupioni before I do this. And then I'm going to come around and just simply straight stitch it or zigzag it to get finished gathering my lace onto this round circle of the silk dupioni. When I get to the end, I'll just turn onto one piece, butt it up to this, turn onto one piece, turn onto the other piece, and overlap them and finish up my circle. Then I'll bring the circle around, put it over my candlestick and the styrofoam ball, and using my silk ribbon, just come around and tie it. And that makes an absolutely adorable bonnet stand. And next I have a really beautiful wedding dress in the doll dress category for you. This is a beautiful, beautiful smocked wedding dress for my doll named Cecil. Now you can see she has a beautiful veil. What I really want to look at right now though is the beautiful, beautiful smocked bodice of this dress, and the little sleeves have smocking on it too. The bodice is smocked in what is called Italian smocking, when smocking is done on a doll or a child, for a doll or a child, when it's smocked from the shoulder to the waist. I don't know why it's called Italian smocking, but that's called Italian smocking. Now then, some of you have never seen a pleating machine used, so I'm going to show you how you run the pleats in with a pleating machine. First of all, I have the fabric rolled on a dowel stick. You roll the fabric of the skirt and then put it in the back of the pleating machine. Now then, I thread up my threads, and I've used quilting thread, and I hold it as it goes through. And actually, I usually stand up so I can see exactly where it's guiding through on the back, but today I can't stand up, so I'll hopefully get it through reasonably straight. Anyway, I just simply roll it through the pleater, and then I slip the pleats off onto the threads. Just slip the pleats off, and then I pull it out, and then my piece is pleated. Then you can adjust the pleats. And now then, how do we make that beautiful smocked top of the doll dress? The first step is to tie off the pleats and get it about the width that your doll dress is going to be. And then, as you can see, I have my needle and thread threaded here so I can do hand smocking. But good people, I can also just do a little machine smocking stitch across these lines. You can see where the lines are, but you spread them out. I can do machine smocking. I can also do a chain stitch on a serger across those lines and have serger smocking. So hand, machine, or serger, the choice is yours. Now I have smocked this by hand. So after I've smocked the whole piece, I then take the bodice pattern because I need to cut out the neckline, the shoulders, and the armhole. So I lay the bodice pattern across and trace off my lines. You can see how I have done that. The next step is to stitch around those lines I've just drawn, straight stitch. And I make 2 lines of straight stitch for security purposes, one on the line I drew and one on the inside because I don't want those smocking stitches to come out. After I have straight stitched 2 lines around, then I cut out my bodice, and now then I'm ready to treat this just like a regular pattern piece and go ahead and construct my dress because I really have the front bodice of the dress smocked and then cut out. And that's basically what you do. Now then, let me show you one more thing about tying off the threads here. You pull in the threads, and you can tie them off, usually about 2 or 3 threads at a time, because I will need to. And when I tie these threads off, it's kind of spongy. Quilting thread's kind of a spongy thread. I usually tie it once, I tie it again, and maybe even tie it again. All of these threads eventually are going to be pulled out before the dress is finished, and then I'll tie off these top threads. And now won't you come along to my attic with me? This beautiful, beautiful silk taffeta christening dress I bought from my friend Stephen Lunn in London. It is truly to die for. It's a coat, a christening coat, and a christening dress. Now the cape is very beautiful. It has the tucks to hold in the fullness, and then this absolutely beautiful lace. And then the bottom part of the cape has a beautiful hand faggoting to connect the 2 pieces. Once again, the beautiful lace, and as you can see on the ruffle, released tucks. Absolutely beautiful. There is a real interesting feature on the front. This dress is left open in the front, and it is quilted. It's very, very thick and quilted with the silk also. The reason some of the dresses were left open in the front is that for some of the faiths, when you baptize the baby, they want to anoint the baby's chest with oil. Now this back of this cape is truly magnificent too. Isn't that pretty? What more do you say about a beautiful piece like this? The beautiful mitering and the top of the cape comes down with a little miter, and then the beautiful curve around with a hand faggoting, and once again, the bottom of the cape with its released tucks. Thank you for joining me in my sewing room today. I've had a lot of fun, and I hope you have too. I'd really like to invite you back next time.